their places. I'd like to call the City of San Carlos's Planning and Transportation Commission meeting for November 7th to order. Thank you. We'd like to start with a roll call. Oh, pledge, then roll call. First, let's pledge, and then we'll roll call. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now if staff could call the roll.
Commissioner Roof?
Here.
Commissioner Garvey?
Here.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Here.
Vice Chair Clements?
Here.
And Chair Iacopone is excused.
Thank you. So, in Chair Iacopone's absence, I'd like to welcome everyone here to the evening meeting for the Planning and Transportation Commission, and first start out with public comment. A public comment period is limited to items that are not on the agenda. We're item 4 on the agenda, if you're following along. The Commission may briefly respond to statements or made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or to have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. So if anyone would like to speak and you're in person, please fill out a speaker card located in the back, and city staff can take that, or you feel free to raise your hand when we call for public comments. If you're on Zoom, you can either raise your hand or you can call 1-669-900-9128 and enter the meeting ID to get in the Zoom meeting, which I think people may have. It's on the agenda, 886-3546-7439. If you'd like to make a comment, please observe the meeting through the Zoom link. And if you'd like to raise your hand, you can use the raise hand feature. If you're on the phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand instead. So, with that, do we have any comments? Any people who'd like to make a public comment tonight?
None in person.
Thank you. And Lynette, virtually, do we have anybody queued up with their hand raised?
There are no hand raised at this moment.
Thank you, Lynette. Okay, with that, we'll close the public comment. I think I need a motion to close.
I'll move that we close the public comment period.
Thank you. In a second.
Second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes, thank you. And now we're on to agenda item 5, approval of the minutes, which has been postponed to the meeting of November 21st. So we can roll on to item 6, which is new business. Tonight we're going to receive a presentation on the San Carlos Avenue Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project, Phase 3. And so, please, Chair's floor is yours.
Good evening, Madam Vice Chair and Commissioners. I am Stephen Machida, the Public Works Director. So with you tonight is we're going to actually go through the San Carlos Avenue Pedestrian Safety Project, and we'll just kind of go over kind of some of the things that we've been doing. But before I do kind of move the presentation along, I just wanted to say, since this is really our first opportunity to really present to the Planning Commission, I wanted to actually have a lot of my staff here present tonight. So as I mentioned, I'm the Public Works Director. I do have the City Engineer, Grace Lee, our Senior Engineer, Vatsal Patel, as well as our Associate Engineer, Evan Kai. So as well as I do have a consultant who actually will be giving a presentation tonight on kind of what we have accomplished and what we have done to date. Brian Fletcher, he's with Calendar Associates, so I'd like to turn it over to Brian, and he'll actually go through the process that we use to move this project along. So Brian?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Brian Fletcher. I'm a principal with Calendar Associates Landscape Architects. I'm also a resident of San Carlos for, now over, I think, almost 21 years. So it's been a real privilege for me to work on projects within my own city and my own community. So I'll walk through the project. As you all know, this isn't the first phase of the project. There has been 2 other phases prior. But in general, the goals and objectives of the project were to increase pedestrian safety by providing a continuous public sidewalk along San Carlos Avenue, which wasn't there before. And then to improve mobility for all community members. Sorry, I'm getting used to the new configuration here. I have not been here before. Improve the mobility for all community members. So ADA accessibility, enhance the bike lanes, and then provide beautification enhancements where we can, whether that's street trees or also stormwater planters. We have a responsibility to treat our stormwater before it goes into the storm drainage. So these are opportunity areas that we can not only provide the storm drainage, but also beautification as well. So as you're aware, this project has gone through multiple phases 1 and 2, but there's also been other work happening on San Carlos Avenue, multiple phases of the large eucalyptus trees that have been removed over time. And I believe we are now completed with those efforts. So moving forward, the first 2 phases of the project, phase 1 was from Wellington Avenue to Alameda. Phase 2 was from Alameda to Prospect, and those 2 phases were completed at the very same time. And those are completed out there today. So some of the improvements that we were able to accomplish there were the continuous sidewalks along the way, and you can see some of the work being done there. And at each one of the residents, we had to work to conform driveways to the new limits of the sidewalk. You can see some of the bike improvements that we had. Where we have kind of the uphill areas, we wanted to paint those green to make them much more visible. We were able to get bike boxes in, which you can see in the image to the right. Those are opportunities for bikes to get a little bit of advance, kind of go ahead at some of those signalized intersections. And then here you can see some of the bioretention or stormwater planters that we were able to install as part of that phase 1 and 2 project. So now it's time to take a look at the 3rd phase of the project, and the project limits are from Beverly to Wellington to the limits of the previous project. So how did we go about developing the plans that you see here before you tonight? Before we even started, we had individual meetings. We made the opportunity for people to have individual meetings with myself and members of your staff to begin to take a look at what the potential impacts would be and to provide an opportunity to provide feedback to us even before we got started into the first public workshop. We also issued an online survey. We then presented some options at the first community open house. We took feedback and then made revisions and presented a second alternative at the second community open house as well. We met with 12 individual neighbors. We had 62 respondents to the online survey, and we had 10 people attend the last community open house. We also anticipate additional meetings as we continue to refine the design moving forward. So the overall response, most participants were very supportive of the general idea of the project of improving pedestrian safety and connectivity along the corridor, as well as the improved bike facilities. This was the original concept plan that was presented in the meetings, the online survey, as well as the community open house number 1. right now and I should have had an image of existing conditions, but right now you all know the site in that there is not a sidewalk on kind of the northern side of the street. There's a lot of informal parking kind of going along there. Sometimes it's in the bike lane, sometimes it's not. So this would be an improvement as far as pedestrian safety along this corridor. So kind of beginning on the northern, which would be the top side there, what you're looking at is green bike lanes. So the general travel lanes will stay about the same. We're going to reduce them down to standards, but we still have the same one way of traffic in either direction. We also have the turn pocket going on to Wellington as well. What you'll see also now is a new sidewalk, and sidewalks actually on both sides of the street, so both northern side and the southern side, and those are depicted, you can kind of see in the light gray that's along there. In the pink there is the anticipated potential impacts to the driveways. These are the conforms that we looked at that photograph before. We are going to have to reconfigure driveways in order to seamlessly conform to the new limits of sidewalks and the new grades. What you'll also see a little bit in there are some yellow dash lines. Those are further potential impacts for existing retaining walls and other kind of more structural improvements on some of these areas. They're all within the public right-of-way. So you can see in the dashed line just above the new sidewalks on either side, you'll see two dashes and a long line. That's the right-of-way. So that's the limits of the public right-of-way. So when we looked at this, we really couldn't, in order to get the sidewalks and the bike lanes in, couldn't really get any parking formally in until 2308. And that's what you'll see in this original concept plan that we proposed, parking pockets. So we're able to get, in this original concept, some parking along that way. And I think that completes kind of the overview of this. The southern side, you'll see green bike lanes, buffered. That's an important thing. This is an up and downhill, so we included buffered bike lanes, not just standard bike lanes, as well as the new sidewalk on the southern side as well. So we took that concept plan, went to back to the public, and had an open house and received feedback. The general concerns is impact to kind of what they have improved within the right-of-way, so retaining walls and some of the frontages, impact to the driveways and how we would conform, removal and street parking and impacts to the side streets. But within the parking area that we did show, there was a lot of concerns for existing sight lines. So this is on an uphill plus a curve. So the residents that lived in those had a lot of concerns about parked cars continuing to block sight lines of oncoming traffic for them to come out of their driveways. And then the last general concern was, how are we going to address congestion during construction? So we went back to the drawing board, made some adjustments. We did eliminate the parking that was identified on there because of the concern for sight lines. And then as we move into construction drawings, we're going to be addressing the congestion during construction through project staging and specifications to the contractor. So the concept plan that we presented to the public back at the second open house, really the slight differences that you'll see will be the elimination of the parking as we get closer to Beverly. And again, that's past resident 2308 and up to Beverly. So you can see it's just the continuous sidewalk. And then again, we're going to address construction staging and during further design. Now, I mentioned we are going to be, we're going to be taking this now more into detailed construction drawings, at which point we are very much going to need to further refine the potential impacts and how we're going to reconstruct any walls that need to be removed in order to make way for these public improvements. So we will be taking a look at much more detailed design of those improvements. So we did take it to the public. The refined design was generally accepted without any significant design changes from the public. So as I mentioned, the next steps would be more detailed design, understanding and defining more the exact limits of the conform grading and the improvements to walls that would have to be removed, and then also restoration of landscaping and such. So here we are with the project timeline. You can see we're meeting kind of, I don't know, what is that, halfway or 2/3 here, trying to get approval on the design concept. And then we are going to continue to move further into finalizing the plans and construction drawings, and hopefully move into construction later on this next year, April, May of 2023. Do you want me to give this one? Or you can give this one.
So I think as staff kind of realizes this is probably really your first opportunity to really see this project. So we just wanted to kind of get your input on, on the project itself. Just again, conceptual. As Brian has indicated, we are still in the process of kind of finalizing some of the plans and kind of looking at, some of the things that we can and cannot do out in the field. But we just wanted to kind of get your feedback. As Brian had indicated, we really have done some extensive outreach to not only the residents who will be directly affected by the project, but also we did the kind of community-wide outreach again to gain support from the community at large. And so what we really want to do is kind of get your feedback and see, what are some of the concerns that you might have kind of going forward. And then we would actually, kind of take that information along and present that to our city council, who will also have a similar opportunity to kind of discuss the plans and improvements before we finalize some of the conceptual or final design themselves. So anyway, I guess I'll turn it back to the chair for further discussion.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for the presentation. That was very helpful. I guess I'd like to ask if there are any clarifying questions from the commissioners before we start a discussion. Yes, Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. One question possibly for Brian. You said the term buffered bike lane. Yes. Can you add some clarity to that? What is a buffered bike lane?
Yeah, a traditional bike lane is a single stripe that separates the travel lane from the bike lane. A buffered bike lane actually has 2 stripes and a distance between those 2 stripes to give a little bit of extra room, a little bit extra buffer between the travel lane and the bicycle. This is really important where you've got areas where the bicycles are traveling slower, as in an uphill, provides a little bit of extra protection for those bicyclists. What we're only talking about is 1 or 2 feet of buffer here, instead of just 4 inches of a stripe.
Okay. And does that then, that additional space result in a narrowing of the traffic lane, or a narrowing of, where does the extra space come out, or does it result in a narrowing of the bike lane?
Neither. We're going to we have to follow standards for the lane widths. So we cannot arbitrarily kind of reduce the width of the lane, nor do we want to reduce the width of the bike lane. So we're proposing a buffer plus a 5-foot bike lane.
Okay, I got it.
So it moves. We had extra asphalt out there, a little bit extra wide lane. So we're just making sure that we're following those correct standards. Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Thank you, that's all.
Commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Roof.
For the road that the vehicles travel on, will that be repaved or restriped? Is that part of the scope of this?
That's an easy answer, yes. Although the striping is generally the same configuration, it's a little shifted in different areas. So certainly the striping is going to be redone, and the lane and the roadway itself will be slurry sealed and redone.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Roof?
That's it for clarifying questions. I have
Clarifying
feedback,
questions?
but that's the
Okay, great.
category.
Commissioner Castaneda?
You mentioned that you had met with 12 homeowners, I believe, and 62 people also answered surveys. Have you heard from everyone?
We've provided the opportunity to meet with us to everyone, absolutely. We placed information at each one of the doors. We've reached out citywide as well, and we're continuing. So by all means is our outreach not over. As we continue through, I'm available. We are making ourselves completely available to have one-on-one meetings, which I think are going to be necessary as we move forward into some of these finer details of the conforms.
Okay, and in looking at this, is it only, am I correct, that there are only 3 properties that have these decorative structures that need to be removed and relocated? Is that correct? Which I understand would maybe be walls or something.
At this point of the design, we're looking at those 3. The design is going to move into grading, which we actually specify the grades of the new sidewalk. That may bring forth some other conflicts. We don't know yet. But the for sure and obvious ones are those first 3, the first 2, and then the 4th residence coming up from Wellington.
Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner
Thank you, Chair. One additional question. The stormwater planters in the initial phases are very attractive. Do you envision doing something similar in size and design with this latest phase? Okay, yeah, they're very nice.
I had just a few questions too. You said that there had been on the north side, there had been kind of irregular parking of cars, and part of that was in the existing bike lane. Is that right?
Yeah, just my experience driving through the area and understanding the area, because that whole edge is rather undefined, cars were parked, wherever they could. Sometimes that is in conflict a little bit with the bike lanes, sometimes it's not.
Okay, thanks. And to Commissioner Castaneda's questions, it looks like there are 16 homes affected on the handout, or at least the addresses are given for 16 homes, and that I count 17, I'm calling them pink spaces. Could we go back to that slide? I'm just trying to understand. It looks like there are a couple, of homes that maybe you have not reached then those homeowners to talk to them?
Most certainly, there are a few homes that have not reached out to us for individual meetings. I'm not certain that they weren't on the public open house, either one of those meetings. But as far as the personal one-on-one meetings, we've gone out to every single one that has requested one of those.
And you said you left flyers for those who do. Thank you. And can you just help me understand better, when we see the pink on the diagram, what that will consist of when the project is done?
Yeah, so the pink, and I'm going to just go back to one of those, the first phases. So you see that image on the left? Okay, so the pink represents that. It represents what do we need to do on that driveway in order to smoothly conform from the existing driveway to the new limits of the sidewalk. So we've got a lot of grade differences between the proposed sidewalks and some of these garages, especially at closer to Wellington. So we're going to be analyzing and studying what do we need to do to make a smooth transition. So the pink represents that conform, represents that area behind the new sidewalk that we're going to need to reconstruct that driveway. And right now it's preliminary until we get into construction, more detailed construction drawings. But by the time we get to construction, we'll have a very good idea of where the exact limits are going to be.
Got it. I just have a couple more clarifying questions. When retaining walls or other kind of things that have been erected in the right-of-way need to be removed, whose cost is it to remove those items?
Make sure I don't misspeak on this, but the project is going to be, just like we did for Phase 1 and Phase 2, the project is going to be taking on the cost of removal and reconstruction of what needs to be done in order to put that back in general conformance with what's needed for grading and things like that. So it is part of the project.
I see. And so
Actually,
even though
just want to make sure.
even though the owners have built in the right-of-way, the city has budgeted to actually make them whole and get the work done for them, in essence.
Yes.
Well, that's
Yes.
very generous.
Yes,
Thank you.
hasn't been the case on other projects we've
Yeah,
worked on.
that's my understanding. The default is not like that. So, and then I just have one more question to Commissioner Garvey's comments. I know sometimes bike lanes have barriers of different types, and just wondered how the dimensions of the street or other factors made you decide on the buffered bike lane versus other kinds of barrier constructions.
Are you talking, it's basically, we have to take a look at how much improvement on the bicycle infrastructure you get and balance that with the potential impacts to the residents as well. So we felt that the buffered bike lane provides more protection, more separation for the bicyclist than a traditional bike lane, without going to something a little bit more structured that may take a little bit more room. So that's generally, why we chose the buffered bike lane.
Got it. Yeah, it looks like the south side has far fewer entrances to the street, that would be potentially a better candidate, but that it would be hard to do that.
Yeah, and
on
this
the
one,
north.
we've got a
Just
pretty
wondering what you
straight
think about.
shot. If you remember on Phase 2, as you're coming towards Cordilleras, we actually elevated the bike lane a little bit there because cars were cutting into the bike lane there. So we wanted a little bit more of a protection there. On the straight shots, generally people behave a little bit better.
And sorry, just my final clarifying question. So could you put back up the calendar, please? Just trying to figure out which fiscal years we're going into. So have all of the funds, it looks like construction will be late spring, through the summer, potentially, next year. So have all of the funds been budgeted for Phase 3, and are they in the 22-23 budget, or that's going into 23-24 also?
So the budget is actually allocated for this fiscal year, but yeah, we'll carry it over into next year.
Got it. Capital projects, right? They take a while. I understand. Do any other commissioners have clarifying questions? Yes, Commissioner Garvey.
Just one additional question. Thank you, Chair. On all those properties that are on the north side, Brian, do they all have sufficient parking available on their properties to park 2 cars? Or do some people only have enough space to park 1 car and they were parking that second car on the street? I think they all have garages. I don't think they all have.
Garages. Some of the driveways, maybe a little. I'm just looking at the drawing that you can see here. Most of them look like they at least can fit 2 cars within the driveway. There's a few 2212. That may not, but they also do have garages.
All right, thank you.
And this doesn't prohibit them from, making an application to widen their driveway either, too. Oh, good point. Okay. So.
Great, thank you. Any other clarifying questions from the commissioners? No? If not, I think we'll go to public comment then, to see if anyone in the community has something that they would like to comment on. So if you'd like to make a public comment on agenda item 6A for 7, is that the correct title?
I think that's a typo.
I think that's a typo from another meeting. On the San Carlos Avenue Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project, Phase 3, now would be a time to speak. So if you, again, I don't think I see anybody in the audience here that's not staff, but if there is anyone online on the Zoom meeting, you can raise your hand by clicking on the raised hand icon at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on the phone, you can press *9, and then when you're called on, press *6 to unmute. Lynette, do we have any callers?
Yes, we have caller Sonia.
Welcome. Sonia, please, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. I really want to appreciate, on behalf of bicyclists and pedestrians in San Carlos, that we are getting further improvements on San Carlos Ave, especially with buffered bike lanes, which makes a really big difference for the perception of safety, both for the rider and the parents of the riders, speaking as a parent of 4 children who bike in San Carlos. And I also wanted to just confirm that the plan is, even though this Phase 3 stops at where it does, that there is still a plan to take the bike lanes and the sidewalks all the way to, I think there's sidewalks, but the bike lanes also all the way to Carlmont, the Four Corners area. Is that correct? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Lynette, do we have anyone else who would like to make a comment?
Yes, we have Judy.
Hi, Judy, welcome. You have 2 minutes, please go ahead.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. A part of the eucalyptus removal program, there were going to be replacement trees also added in, and I'm just wondering what phase that's going to happen in. We're at the end of, we're on Plymouth Avenue, and there were 2 beautiful eucalyptus trees at the end of the street, and I was told they were going to be replaced, and I'm just wondering if that's part of this program.
Great, thank you, Judy. Thanks for your comment and question. I think you have a little bit more time if you'd like to say anything else or ask anything else.
No, that's it. Just wondering about the tree replacements.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Judy. Lynette, do we have any more callers in the queue?
We don't have any more at this moment.
Okay, thank you. So with that, we'll turn back to the commission. If any commissioners would like to share their thoughts, you can ask more clarifying questions. And if anyone would like to pick up any of the comments from the public, feel free to do so. Would someone like to speak first? Commissioner Roof?
Thank you for the presentation, and I thought the outcome of phases 1 and 2 is really beautiful. Particularly the way the bike lane was handled with respect to the traffic. It looks much better there now. And so I'm really looking forward to phase 3. And I've walked up and down the street a few times with this in hand, and it looks like it all makes sense to me. My main concern is there going to be a phase 4, and what's going to happen between this section and Carlmont High School, in that it's a bike lane. Right now, it's kind of a bike lane to nowhere, in that there isn't if I recall correctly, there's not a delineated bike lane as you proceed north on San Carlos Avenue, unless I'm mistaken. But in any case, it's a pretty hazardous stretch of road to be on a bicycle. So that's the concern, is kind of not within the section, but what it connects to.
So certainly, thank you. In regards, this is the 3rd phase. So this, as Brian had indicated, this essentially ends at Beverly. It was really to connect essentially the sidewalk improvements. So, but as the Planning Commission is probably very aware of, we actually, council has adopted a bicycle pedestrian master plan. And in that, has components of kind of looking at kind of the remainder, if you will, of San Carlos Avenue. We haven't really have a project specifically identified of what the next phases will be. However, there are improvements that are identified in the bicycle master plan that we're looking at right now. Did that answer your question?
I guess my feedback for the staff and city council would be that to prioritize looking at a phase 4. I know the sidewalk, this was kind of a pedestrian-centered plan, and the sidewalk is fine along the rest of the section, so it makes sense that where this one ends. But the bicycle lane part of it is important, and so my feedback would be if we could find a way to see what solutions might be possible there, which may not be too easy given the width of the street.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Any other thoughts at the moment?
Maybe I'll let others speak and then come back around to me a little later.
Great, thank you. I think Commissioner Garvey had her hand up next.
Thank you, Chair. One question. Can you comment on respond to the caller who had raised something about replacement trees? Is that a part of this project at all, or is that not considered transportation and that comes under a different heading?
Well, normally the additional or adding additional trees were not really included in the scope of work, so we have not planned to actually plant any additional trees. I know this question had come up, and it is something that we may want to discuss with, the city manager as well as council, perhaps for a future project along this corridor.
Thank you. Commissioner Castaneda?
I also walked along this area and took a look at the project, and I think with your explanation, which was very clear, I think this is going to be a vast improvement. I think the sidewalk areas there are actually quite dangerous that I was walking on. So I think this looks really good, and I like the idea of the buffered bike lane because people go rather fast along this stretch of highway, so I think that's a really good improvement. I also would like to see trees included on the other side. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you clarify the other side? Do you mean the south side?
Yes.
Thank you. I had a couple of comments, unless you'd like to go.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I, too, support this project the way you've designed it and laid it out. I like the continuing the stretch of sidewalk, and it's difficult to do as much as you want in every phase, and this phase is, has finite boundaries, and there's opportunities to do more in the future. And I think I agree with my colleagues who say that we don't want to lose sight that there's still more to do. But having said that, this is a very good project. And I would echo the comments that we think about replacement trees in another scope of work or maybe as an add-on to this. Thank you.
I would like to comment. Yeah, I actually really agree with all of my colleagues' statements. I think the design looks like it is not taking away from those locations and from the driveways by the photo that was presented. I was concerned that somehow the folks would have less use of their driveway or kind of not feel like they're, I felt like it was a net negative for them, but at least the photo that was represented looked like a net positive, potentially for some people, the way that their driveway meets the road. I know a lot of driveways don't meet the road really well, and cars can scrape and things like that. So it's nice to have somebody repair and make it much more walkable. I would also echo the the caller that was hoping, and Commissioner Roof, for the bike lanes to continue down to Carlmont. There's a lot of activity, as we all know, and a lot of children of all ages that, go down that stretch. And so I think the bike lanes will be really important to serving our schools and between the schools and the downtown, because that activity is there and so many cars are there. Also, at Carlmont Hours, and then the junior high across the way. So I would really encourage a next phase to look to see if there are resources to continue the bike lanes and, look at the sidewalks, but it sounds like the sidewalks are in good repair. And then my only other thought is that I also really like planting of street trees, and I know that it's an investment and it's a maintenance issue. And so we have to be thoughtful about where we do that. But I do think the more that we have street trees and we have good bike lanes, the more people will take to the street, and get out of their cars. And I think a lot of people are in this area generally would like to do that. And it's a good place that we're focusing our work. So I want to commend you for taking a thoughtful approach and really working overtime. The last thing I would say is just, I know, to keep trying to reach the neighbors who are going to be impacted. Hopefully some folks at least think it's a net positive. I do think the city replacing the what has been planted in the right-of-way is very generous. And so I think that that's wonderful. So I'm sure that as this project continues, you'll be working some more and coordinating with people, because I know obviously it'll impact their ability to get out of their driveways on certain days. So I know there'll be more communication around that. But it sounds like you've done a good job. And one last thought, I appreciate that the meetings were citywide. It's not just the neighbors in that general area or the wider area over there. There are people all over our little city that use this area. So I commend you for doing citywide meetings on this. Do the commissioners have any other thoughts or comments?
I do.
Please.
I do have one more thought, which when you're heading towards this stage 3 area from Alameda, the area after the elementary school, up to Devonshire, it's pretty wide open and very straight and nicely striped, but it's almost like a little expressway. And I wondered if you've given consideration about traffic calming. I understand from the presentation that they'll be reducing the travel lanes to standard. I guess that means narrowing them a little, and that means people drive a little slower perhaps, but has an analysis been done to see what the impact of this would have on traffic speed?
Well, certainly we always have the opportunity, and I know we probably have several traffic cases that want us to look a little bit more closely at the speeds on San Carlos Avenue. I know recently we have kind of performed certain warrants or speed surveys, and just generally they are kind of at the posted speed limit. So we're confident that, the speed is posted. However, there's always opportunity for looking for other traffic calming measures that, possibly we could install along this corridor. I know we're currently installing, or this is another project that unfortunately did not come to this body. However, we have some rectangular rapid flashing beacons that we're actually installing at Kenton and San Carlos Avenue. So the work has already started. We're still kind of waiting for some of the equipment to arrive, just unfortunately due to supply chain issues. But, that is going to be some of the traffic or rapid flashing beacons. And again, this is mostly for pedestrian crossing, but we're going to have one at Kenton and San Carlos Avenue, as well as one at Prospect in San Carlos Avenue. And we're also looking for other opportunities. In fact, I believe we're installing some speed feedback signs along, I guess along the reach, just, if you will, kind of northwest of this location. But certainly there's always opportunities to looking at other measures that we could install.
Great, thank you. If I could clarify then with the director and with staff, have you received the feedback that you would like, or would you like to enter for us to make any motions to the city council, or is that really up to us?
It really is up to you. So as I mentioned kind of at the very beginning, I know you haven't had the opportunity to really review this. This actually project had come prior to the Transportation Circulation Commission. But since this body is now them, we want to at least have that opportunity to have you at least look at what we're doing, and then as we proceed and move forward with city council input, at least that you had the opportunity to review it. And so we'll report that to our city council in the report that we make next week.
Great, thank you. And do you just to clarify, do you capture the themes of the comments given, even if we don't make motions?
Yes, we will.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to make a motion? Commissioner Roof?
There's support among us commissioners to make a motion suggesting that a study be done for the area north of, I guess it's north, further towards Carlmont, so that gets on the to-do list in a firmer way than the comments we've already made. If we suggest something specifically, then the message might get across more clearly.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if a study is that the next step? Maybe that's a logistics question. If a next stretch of bike lanes were to be prioritized or traffic calming in the next towards Carlmont, I guess that's northwest, what would the next step be? Because we could also word it to be that we suggest that the city council consider in its upcoming budget or upcoming work plans, both looking at bike lane improvements in this direction and investments of additional street trees to consider whether these is appropriate for these areas. So through the budget process, or perhaps
Right.
the director can advise if that.
Yes, typically when we actually come up with some of the projects that either we receive direction from city council or something that it might be staff generated and we will present it to council and then they would actually formalize it. So we could do it either way. Certainly if the Planning Transportation Commission wishes to actually do a motion to include, certainly that would be kind of taken into our kind of discussions as far as the preparation of our CIP program.
Great, thank you. Well, with that, would you like to try to craft a motion?
I would, but what would the next step be then to improving the bike lane? I mean, would it be a study, or maybe the study isn't the right word? What is the next step?
Well, essentially our study, we would probably go to our bike ped master plan and really probably cut out kind of the segment that we would feel is maybe the most critical or, depending upon the situation. So I'm not sure I could really answer you a specific location, but I mean, that is something that we would have to have study or my staff kind of evaluate and make that determination. Mm-hmm. Because essentially from Beverly to Carlmont, that's quite a long stretch, and it's probably something that we really couldn't do all at once. Mm-hmm. So we would have to probably segment it.
So our motion could be we recommend that the city council direct staff to investigate prioritization and report, from this place to that place and report back to the council or report back to the commission, or probably the council. So,
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
okay.
So should we?
Sounds good. I'd be supportive of that.
Andre, should we capture that? Did you capture?
I think we should
what the
probably
chair
state
just
it
said,
again.
or, do we need
And
to
through the
restate?
chair, I just wanted to clarify, based on your discussion, it sounds like you're asking council to consider this, but not necessarily as part of phase 3.
Right, it would be.
Correct.
Separate.
For
Okay.
another phase, yes, a future
So
phase.
separating kind of the feedback on phase 3, but then indicating the importance of focusing on
Yes.
this other area. Okay.
Maybe we could do a couple of motions then. I heard additional street trees on the south side as one of your desired. And I think, I'm not sure. Commissioner Garvey, did you have any other resulting kind of recommendations for council?
I support Commissioner Roof's suggestion that we evaluate and study looking at further
Looking
north all the
forward.
way to
Anything on
Carmel.
phase 3? Let's do it that way. And is there a motion that we could make or would like to make on phase 3 to recommend that the city council, just hear the motion directly? I think Commissioner Castaneda had a request to examine whether phase 3's scope, it wouldn't be part of phase 3, but it would be the area covered by phase 3. I assume would be appropriate for additional street tree investment.
So we could just ask the council to consider that as part, to consider the addition of trees to the south side as part of phase 3? Or, could we say even subsequent to that? It doesn't have to be
Right.
part of phase 3.
Right, in the area covered by phase 3.
The area covered by phase 3, that would work.
Okay. So I heard a motion from Commissioner Castaneda to recommend to the city council to investigate whether additional street trees on the south side of San Carlos Avenue in the area that phase 3 is covering could be prioritized for a future investment plan
Correct.
or budget action. How'd that go?
Sounds good.
Okay, we have a second? Did you make that motion or?
Do you want me to, or should I second it? I
Okay,
can
that's
second
fine.
it, yeah.
I heard that as a motion, and I would second that.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so whatever the record would like to show, that would be fine. We have 2 seconds and a fake motion maker. Thank you. And on that motion, discussion. Would we like to hear from the public on that motion? We don't need to necessarily, unless if anyone would like to make a public comment on that motion, they're welcome to. Oh, we did close the hearing. Sorry.
I have a comment that it makes sense to look at this holistically, and so broadening the scope a little so that you get the right, even if you're just putting the right hole in the concrete for a tree someday, that would be part of this project. So looking at it holistically makes sense.
Okay. Is that an amendment to the language of the
No,
motion?
that was just a comment, I think,
Yeah,
as far as
it's a good point. And obviously the experts know how to plan these things out, and when over multiple years, it's a little complicated. So, yeah, it's a good point. Any other discussion on that motion? No? Okay. If not, let's take a roll call on that motion on the floor.
Commissioner Roof,
yes.
Commissioner Garvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
Vice Chair Clemens.
Yes, thank you. Great. And then I think Commissioner Roof had wanted to try to craft another motion.
Yes, I would like to make a motion a motion to request that City Council direct the staff to evaluate improvement of the bike lanes from Beverly to Carmont High School.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Does staff have that motion down? Okay, great. So on the motion that the City Council prioritize bike lane continuation from Beverly to Carmont, was there a time frame listed? Clarifying.
What do you suggest?
I don't know, in the near future.
I mean, I would think that would be that could begin now and
Sure.
in the near term.
Right. The next time that prioritization comes forward, how about that? or planning for the next CIP. Okay, that was clarification then. All right, so we had a motion and we had a second, and so I think we're ready for roll call.
And through the chair first, I just want to add for that motion, we'll also, you mentioned looking at it at the next time of prioritization. Do you want me to say budget, during the time of budget or goals? I just want to make sure we separate it out from.
Well, I think it's a kind of a technical question where is there a time in which the work plan or the prioritization for potential public works gets done that is not at the same time as a budget action or a proposed budget? Or is that one and the same?
It's one of the same. Typically, we would want to do it during the CIP budget preparation.
Perfect. Then the CIP budget preparation. Thank you very much. Okay, now I think we're ready for a roll call.
Commissioner Roof,
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey,
Yes.
Commissioner Castaneda,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Clements.
Yes. And that motion passes. Great. Does that end the item? Would there be any other thoughts?
I'm excited to see this go forward.
I am too.
Great work the city's doing.
I'd like to thank Director Machida, and also thank you to Brian Fletcher for your presentation and staff for attending today. We appreciate that. Okay. I think that brings us on to agenda item 7, reports, correspondence, and general information. First, does staff have any reports on recent city council actions?
None to report.
Thank you. And item B, 7B, Planning Commission. Any comments or reports from commissioners? No? Thanks. Any correspondence to report? Andrea?
None to report.
Okay, great. And then finally, planning staff comments, reports, and updates on current projects.
I have quite a few, actually. So at the next council meeting on November 14th, 405 Industrial will be going for the plan development as well as the development agreement. So that'll be on the 14th. Another update on a council item, 703 Knoll Drive, which was heard by the commission, was appealed to city council. On the 28th, it will be going to council just to schedule a future hearing date. So they will not actually hear the appeal that evening, but a date will be set for the appeal itself. And then for your next meeting on the 21st, we have tentatively scheduled a few items. One is a discussion of the roles of the TNC, which are now passed to the Planning Commission. So a larger discussion on that, as well as a bike and ped plan update and implementation presentation. We are also planning on presenting the Community Development Department work program to you. So that will include updates from advanced planning, current planning, any building updates, as well as housing and economic development. So just kind of an overview of what we're working on right now and what we're looking forward to in the future. And then finally, we have a conditional use permit for a Formula business located on the 600 block of Laurel for Paris Baguette. So that'll be coming forward then as well. The use requires a use permit because it's considered a Formula business, which is a business that has 15 or more locations in the United States. So it requires review by the Planning Commission. And that's what we have scheduled so far. And then on the 5th of December, we tentatively have this scheduled. I'll know more at the next meeting. But the objective design standards work that's going on, we want to come to the commission and get some input on multifamily and mixed use standards. So that is tentatively scheduled on the 5th. And that is it.
Great, thanks. Andrea, I think we were still pending on SB 9. Ordinance, is that right?
Thank you, yes. So SB 9 will also be going to City Council on the 28th for an extension of the urgency ordinance. So originally when this initiative had started, we anticipated coming back with a permanent ordinance around this time. However, as we've been doing work on the objective design standards, we realized that there's really quite a bit of overlap. So it made a lot of sense to address the SB 9 standards along with the objective design standards. And so we're extending the urgency ordinance to allow for that work to be done. We've also had, since the urgency ordinance was adopted, we've had 2 SB9 applications, both of which were for existing units to be legalized. So we have not received any applications for lot splits or net new units that weren't already existing. So we don't anticipate a big influx of applications in the meantime.
All right, thank you. And with that, I think we can move on to adjournment. Thank you so much, and congratulations to Andrea for her new role in the department. That's wonderful news. And thanks for your work. Appreciate it. Thank you, Connor. We are adjourned.